Hey, Ain't Soph here. I know, it's been a minute since my last video, but as you can see, I've been pretty busy. And I have an important announcement to make. It is time for a new generation of Keypad combination locks. In this video, I recount my odyssey of discovery, frustration, and ultimate triumph as I walk you through my iterative design process to create a new breed of keypad combination locks that are blazing fast, compact, and easy to build. There will be showcases, practical redstone tips, and deep dives into exotic redstone mechanics. There's even a combo lock riddle. Can you solve it to crack my code? And speaking of cracking codes, did you know there's a massive security hole in Minecraft's most famous combination lock? All this and more awaits in this Redstone Masterclass. If you've built a combination lock in your world, chances are it looks something like this. This is the RPZ CraftyMasterman 9-button combo lock. It's quite compact, though it does take up really valuable real estate directly behind the user interface. And speaking of the UI, it does require a whole wall of buttons. And being a 9-button combo lock, there's no zero. So your passcode better not have a zero in it. You could add that 10th button for the zero, but that's just going to make this even bigger. But my main gripe with this design is just the slow pace at which you have to enter the digits. Enter them too quickly, and then the passcode's not going to work, and it's going to reset. So to demonstrate, I'll enter a code. This one's configured to accept the first 10 digits of pi. So 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 9, 2, 6, 5, 3, and there it is. But whew, that was a lot of work, and life's just too short to be waiting over a second between each digit. Fortunately, these days are over. Here's my first demo. The code here is 1212661. And we're in. A few things to note here. The UI is obviously super compact since it's just a chiseled bookshelf. You can enter the digits in a blazing fast manner, more than 3 times faster than any button-based design, and twice as fast as the leading chiseled bookshelf-based design, as far as I can tell. This one handles repeat digits. It's completely silent, other than the sound of removing books from the bookshelf. Every time you remove a book, it's almost instantly replenished, and any books that you pick up can just be dropped on the ground in front of it, where they will be automatically reloaded back into the system, once again, silently. Let's see it one more time. 1212661. Now, you may be wondering, Ain't Soph, you were just talking about how a 9-button design doesn't have a zero, and now you're showing me a 6-button design. Well, that's true, but this is just the first demo. Now let's check out my base 12 design. The code for this one is 6, 7, 12, 12, 1, 6, 7. Ah, home sweet home. Now, we do require a second chiseled bookshelf to support base 12, but the UI is still way more compact than any button-based design, and it's still every bit as fast as the base 6 model. Now, you don't have to code these with 1 through 12. You could just stick with 0 through 9. All you have to do is just not configure any 10s or 12s, and anywhere you want a 0, you configure it as an 11. And I just think this design is really nice. These books, if you just allow yourself to imagine it, look like buttons on a control panel, which means they're also suitable for futuristic builds.
Now, witness the speed of this fully compacted and operational keypad combination lock.
Now, for my last demo, we'll head to the library, because no keypad combination lock based on a chiseled bookshelf would be complete without also showcasing a hidden door. This is a lovely little library. Complete with a nice area to study. Oh, what's this? Good point. And there's another one over here. Face the blank gaze of Hades' dark minion, and invoke he who witnessed from the sky the flight of Daedalus and Icarus his son, Elytra's first test, so sad one must die. This looks important. I'll take that. There we go. The blank gaze of Hades' dark minion. Check. And invoke he who witnessed from the sky. I know the answer to this, but let's see if you can figure it out. If you think you know the passcode, which is the answer to the riddle, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Oh yeah, and if you're enjoying the video, please consider subscribing. That way you'll be one of the first to know once I release new content. At this point, I realize you probably have a great many questions, such as, what do these keypad combination locks even look like? How do they work? How did you develop them? How can I incorporate them into my own builds? And why is this music so dramatic? I will attempt to answer most of these questions, and for that, it's best if I start at the beginning. My journey with combination locks began about a year ago, though I didn't even realize this is what they were called. A bit of foreshadowing right there. It all started when a family member asked me to help create a secret door using the chiseled bookshelf. My initial design was non-sequential and required a separate chiseled bookshelf for each digit in the code. Here's the redstone. Each bookshelf has its own comparator leading into a red coder configured to detect only a single digit as determined by these composters. They're ANDed together, so only when all are registering the correct digits will this redstone line turn off, which briefly opens the door. However, this design has many problems. For one thing, it's limited to just the digits 1 through 6. Also, it's really awkward having to bounce around between multiple chiseled bookshelves that are spaced so far apart. But the worst thing is that this combination lock just isn't secure. Let me demonstrate. So for demo purposes, I just made the code 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. And the door opens. But what happens when someone else comes along? Note that all of these chiseled bookshelves are still currently registering the correct digits for the code. So all you have to do is pick any one chiseled bookshelf. It doesn't matter which one, because this is a non-sequential lock. And just try every single slot until you get the right one. And at worst, you have to just loop back around to the first one that you tried. So for example, we'll try 1, 2, and the door opens. If we pick this bookshelf and select the 1, that's the correct digit for this bookshelf, but it was already registering a 1, so nothing happens at this point. So we just move on. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, loop back to the 1, and it opens. So what's the point in having a combination lock if it won't actually keep anyone out? I figured there must be a better way. So I set out to create a sequential combination lock built around a single chiseled bookshelf. And after quite a bit of struggle, I did manage to make my first working prototype, which we see right here. It does have quite a few issues that we'll get into in just a bit, but it does work. 6, 3, 5, 2, 1. There you go. Let's take a look at the redstone. Yeah, it is big. Though at the time, I didn't realize that I could do a lot better than this. Despite its size, or maybe because of it, I find this design really intuitive once you understand what's going on. The chiseled bookshelf is read out through this comparator into this light blue circuit, which is a red coder converting signal strength into an indicator based on the last slot interacted with, where this is a 1, a 2, etc. These yellow lines bring in the expected digits for the passcode. And the lime green circuits are XOR gates, comparing the expected digits to the entered digits. Since the first digit expected in the passcode is a 6, but the last digit we entered was a 5, both of these XOR gates are active. As a refresher, XOR gates will activate when their inputs differ. And only when all of these XOR gates are deactivated will we be able to move on to the next digit. The passcode is encoded on these orange lines, where this first one is the first digit to be entered. And the position of the torch indicates that we're expecting a 6. The next digit is on this line, and we're expecting a 3, and so on. This hopper line determines which digit in the passcode we're on. So this item is in this hopper, indicating that we're on the first digit. We actually also have one other item on the opposite side of the hopper loop, just so that we can have a faster reset. When you enter a new digit, this observer is detecting a signal strength change. And when that occurs, we check for the status of these XOR gates. If they match, then the purple line activates and we briefly deactivate the redstone on top of these hoppers, unlocking the hopper loop and allowing the item to move over to the next position and the next expected digit. If the XOR gates indicate that we don't have a match, then the blue line leads out to the red circuit, which results in a reset of the whole system. The gray line is for a timeout circuit. So if you take too long to enter your next digit, that will also lead into the red circuit, resetting the whole combination lock. If you enter all of the correct digits, we make our way over to the white output line, which then results in the door opening. Let's talk about what's wrong with this design. You may have noticed this sign. There's no support for back-to-back repeat numbers. And that's because this observer is watching for changes in signal strength. But with back-to-back repeat numbers, that signal strength isn't changing. But this is easily corrected. Instead of putting the observer right here, we can instead observe the chiseled bookshelf itself. And then we just need to make sure that our delay lines up. So we have 1, 2, 3 redstone ticks of delay. So we have here 1, 2, 3 redstone ticks of delay. And we can get rid of all of that. And it's okay that the pulse length is extending to 2 redstone ticks because it's extending to at least 2 redstone ticks anyway. This problem has been fixed, but we still have this really slow 28 game tick input rate. There are 2 main sources of the delay. One is this line of comparators. Right now, it's much faster to process a 1 than it is to process a 6. And that delay is something that we can address. The other issue is with this hopper line. Notice how the item has to travel 2 hoppers to make its way from one digit to the next. This prototype addressed these issues by pushing most of the logic deep below ground where the real estate is less valuable. The comparator line is now gone. Of course, there's still processing time, but it's now fixed regardless of signal strength. Let's take a look below ground. You can see that each of these lines spirals down before terminating in a trapdoor that gets pressed against the wall to send the signals even further down. The reason for this spiraling is so that the sound of the trapdoors won't reach the ears of whoever's operating the chiseled bookshelf. Let's take a look even further down at the hopper line. You can see that now we're taking a reading from every hopper instead of every other hopper. This did require some creativity in making sure that the lines didn't cross. So we have this alternating pattern of an orange line going up and then an orange line going down. And that also meant that the yellow lines had to bifurcate to take a reading from either the upper orange lines or the lower ones. Other than that, most of the logic remained about the same. And the white output line, of course, needs to make its way back up top, so we can just use a bubble column for that. With these changes, I was able to achieve a 14 game tick input delay between digits. And at the time, I couldn't have been happier. Little did I know that before long, my design was going to radically change, and I was going to be able to achieve far faster speeds with much greater compactness. But first, I need to address the elephant in the room. At this point, I had only made a base 6 design. For my initial attempt at creating a base 12 combination lock using 2 chiseled bookshelves, I went with the naive approach of just extending my base 6 design out to 12. You can see the comparator output from the top chiseled bookshelf right here, and behind this note block, you can see the comparator output from the bottom chiseled bookshelf. But then we need some way of boosting the signal from the bottom bookshelf from a range of 1 through 6 to a range of 7 through 12. And for that, I use these two comparators on subtract mode. But then we have a problem, because a signal strength of 7 through 12 will completely mask a signal strength of 1 through 6. So what we needed to happen was any interaction of the top bookshelf needed to result in the signal being blocked from the bottom bookshelf. And for that, I use this circuit right here. It may be hard to recognize in this form, but it's really just a latch, also called an SR latch, which stands for set and reset. So we can see that in action right here, where we send a pulse into one side to toggle the state, and we can send a pulse into the other side to toggle it back. And it doesn't matter how many times we send additional pulses into the same side, it'll only toggle the latch once. But we're not using buttons as inputs, we're using observers that are watching for interactions with the chiseled bookshelves. And ordinarily, an observer output will require a repeater set to 2 ticks in order to change the state of a torch. Now here, I've actually gone away with using a repeater on 1 tick by taking advantage of some tricks. So here we have the redstone line just skipping the repeater, but it's going up a glass block, which serves as a diode in Java Edition, where signals can only go up a glass block but not down. So that prevents us from having this circuit just continually powering in a loop. In the bottom circuit, the observer powers a solid block, allowing us to achieve the same thing. This design looks fairly tidy from up here, but below ground, it's a whole nother story. With 12 separate XOR gates, this thing was just a monstrosity. Fortunately, I had another idea. Instead of sending 12 plus 1 signals down the wall, it would make a lot more sense to convert the analog signal strength to a binary code. In that way, we only need 4 plus 1 signals being sent down. And 4 XOR gates instead of the 12. I also swapped out the hopper loop for locked repeaters to achieve a fixed reset time. The input delay between digits was slightly worse, 16 game ticks instead of 14, but I was still really happy I had created a fully functional base 12 combination lock using dual chiseled bookshelves. And then, CraftyMasterman released this video. In it, he walks through the history of combination locks in Minecraft and discusses the records he and others had broken in terms of compactness. The CraftyMasterman combo lock and related designs make clever use of sequential latches in which each is keyed to a specific signal strength, allowing for far greater compactness. And yes, I learned about Crafty's 2020 combo lock in 2023. You see, I had previously thought I was building a security access keypad with redstone. So, it's true, I failed at search. I know now that the Minecraft community calls these combination locks, or combo locks for short. And while my combo lock had a novel UI that allowed digits to be input faster than buttons, I still wasn't satisfied with the speed. It was also not infinitely expandable, and it was just way too big. I could have moved on at this point, but I don't give up so easily. I thought if I could pair up a dual chiseled bookshelf front end with a compact combo lock on the back end, it could be a winning combination. So I began experimenting with these combo locks, starting with CraftyMasterman's OG design from 2020. By the way, while testing it, I discovered it has a critical vulnerability that makes it far less secure than you'd expect. More on that later. I found that this combo lock allowed digits to be entered 26 or more game ticks apart. This was my first prototype in which I connected a chiseled bookshelf to the original CraftyMasterman lock. You can see that the chiseled bookshelf is right here, and we're taking a comparator output here. We then have this light blue circuit to do a double subtraction using comparators in order to boost the signal by 1 signal strength. And the reason for that is because each module of the CraftyMasterman lock expects a signal strength to be 1 higher than the configured digit. Now, the gray circuit consists of a pulse extender that's triggered by this observer, so any interaction with the chiseled bookshelf causes a pulse to come into the pulse extender, which then deactivates the side input on this comparator, allowing the pulse to flow through. And I configured this to be a 20 game tick pulse because that matches what a button provides. Configured this way, we're able to speed up the input rate to 18 game ticks, which is significantly faster, but still slower than my prior design. But then I noticed something. Each module of the CraftyMasterman lock has 3 repeaters in series. One set on 4 ticks, one set on 1 tick, and one set on 2 ticks. These delays make sense based on a button input, but I thought that with a chiseled bookshelf input, maybe we could shorten these a bit. And in fact, when I set all 3 of them to 1 redstone tick, I was able to then shorten the input pulse to just 12 game ticks. And that allowed an input speed of 14 game ticks. This was now just as fast as my first generation Basics design, but far more compact. Oh, and I should also mention, Crafty wasn't working alone. SacredRedstone also contributed to this OG combo lock. My apologies for not mentioning this sooner. This was still just a base 6 design. I hadn't yet added the second chiseled bookshelf. But before attempting that, I thought I should also check out the latest and greatest CraftyMasterman based combo lock. And here it is. This is the one with jukeboxes, created by CraftyMasterman in collaboration with Purplers and SacredRedstone, and then further compacted by RPZ. In the 9-button configuration, it's rather slow at 23 game ticks per digit. When I wired up a chiseled bookshelf, I found that this combo lock could actually accommodate a 14 game tick pulse length. And that translated into an 18 game tick input delay between digits. It was actually a bit frustrating because 16 game ticks between digits worked, but 17 game ticks did not. Once again, I looked for any delays that could be reduced, and sure enough, I found that each module contained a repeater set to 4 redstone ticks. Naturally, I wondered if I could reduce that down to just 1 redstone tick. And this worked, allowing for an input pulse length of only 8 game ticks, which allowed for an overall input delay between digits of just 10 game ticks. That's half of a second, or 2 digits per second. A huge improvement. I felt like it was time to tackle a dual chiseled bookshelf design with this new paradigm. This is what I came up with. This comparator is taking an output from the upper chiseled bookshelf into this light blue circuit. And this comparator is taking an output from the bottom chiseled bookshelf into the darker blue circuit. In both cases, we're performing a double subtraction using comparators in order to boost the signal strength. In the case of the upper bookshelf output, we're boosting it to the range 2 through 7, and in the case of the lower bookshelf output, we're boosting it to the range 8 through 13. Once again, we're making use of a latch to ensure that when the user clicks on the upper bookshelf, it suppresses the output from the lower bookshelf. And this purple circuit governs both the upper and lower circuits to ensure the proper pulse length is emitted. You can see the pulse extender is here, set to 8 game ticks currently. And it's triggered regardless of whether the upper or lower bookcase is clicked. This base 12 design also allows digits to be input 10 or more game ticks apart. This keypad combination lock was now the fastest one I had come across. And yet, I still felt like it should be possible to create something even faster. I was also dissatisfied with these jukeboxes. It's just incredibly annoying that you have to collect music discs when you want to change your passcode. And the cacophony that results when you do so is something that no one should have to experience. So I was really happy when I came across a better alternative. And once again, I have Crafty to thank for it, though this time, only indirectly. You see, in that same Crafty video I mentioned before, he announced a combo lock competition in which the deciding criteria was compactness. And the first place bounty of $1,000 was awarded to Oligaming for his 27 block per digit design. Now, I know that even more compact designs have emerged, but none of them seemed as promising in terms of usability, reliability, and speed. So once again, I wired up a single chiseled bookshelf front end to a combo lock back end. Oligaming's this time. And I found it was slightly faster, at 9 or more game ticks per digit. And this also held true for my dual chiseled bookshelf design. Thinking this was the best we could do, I began making different variants, including my first general purpose keypad combination locks. For these, I added automatic book restocking and book return features. I was really pleased with this keypad combo lock. It was fast, compact, and easy to configure, whether you chose barrels, chests, or my favorite, lecterns. You could even use jukeboxes if you're a glutton for punishment. I was so happy to be done. I am done, right? Wait. Are these repeaters set to 2 ticks? Once I saw this, I knew I had to at least try setting the repeaters to 1 tick. But this just completely breaks the lock. To understand why and how to fix it, we first need to know how this combo lock works. In the Oligaming combo lock, it's an off signal that propagates through it as a correct code is entered. In order for the signal to turn off, 2 conditions have to be met. The preceding repeater has to be off, meaning all previous digits were correct, and this block has to be powered with a signal strength of exactly 1. That way, the torch will turn off, and the redstone dust below it will have a strength of 1, which decays to 0 for the dust next to it. How do we get a signal strength of 1? This happens when the incoming signal strength is 1 higher than the configured signal strength. Remember, interactions with the books, ranging from 1 to 12, result in signal strengths ranging from 2 to 13. So when the signal strength is 1 higher, we have a match. In order to lock in the off signal, we need to briefly unlock the repeater and then relock it. The repeater is locked when this dropper contains the item, and it is unlocked when the incoming pulse triggers the dropper, sending the item into the hopper. Hoppers have an 8 game tick cooldown, so that's how long it takes for the item to return, and that's how long the repeater is unlocked. When the repeaters are set to 1 redstone tick, they are too quick. They turn off and then back on again by the time they are relocked. The hoppers are the problem. 8 game ticks of delay is just too slow. So I swapped them out for droppers, and it worked. Or so I thought. As we reduce the input delay, we encounter a host of new challenges. At 8 game ticks and below, we must contend with torch burnout. A redstone torch experiences burnout when it is forced to turn off 8 times in 60 game ticks. We can see that with 9 game tick input delays, the first input is in the first game tick, and then the following 7 inputs are at 9 game tick intervals, so the 8 inputs span 64 game ticks, which is greater than the 60 game tick threshold. However, with 8 game tick input delays, the 8 inputs span 57 game ticks, which means torches will burn out. We can hear the burnout happen in this example of a 9-digit code entered at an 8 game tick pace. Right there. The combo lock torches that burned out are the ones that deactivated 8 times, so the 1 and the 2 in the code. And this torch used to emit the pulses. So breaking the 8 game tick barrier means creating a 100% torchless design for all input processing circuits. That includes the latch, the pulse extender, and the combo lock itself. Fortunately, comparators allow us to invert signals like a torch without the burnout side effect. The torch in each combo lock module can be replaced with this comparator-based circuit. And here's a comparator-based latch. Note that the book return system is completely independent, so torches here are fine. However, at 7 game ticks and below, we encounter an issue with the book restocking system. The hoppers simply can't keep up. With at least 8 game ticks of spacing, the hopper restocks books in the very next game tick. Since observers have a 4 game tick cooldown, only the removal of the book triggers the observer. The replacement doesn't. But with 7 game tick spacing, the restocking becomes more and more late. 2 game ticks, 3 game ticks, 4 game ticks, and at that point, the observer is off cooldown and emits a spurious signal. For this, I went with the simplest fix. Double up the restocking hoppers for each chiseled bookshelf. So, I guess it's true. 2 hoppers are better than 1. At 6 game ticks, we run into yet another issue: input interference. Specifically, in the circuits between the chiseled bookshelves and the combo lock. This combo lock requires a 4 game tick pulse and at least a 2 game tick gap between pulses. So 6 game ticks between inputs is the theoretical limit. With a single input, we can see the pulse length is indeed 4 game ticks. However, with 2 inputs 6 game ticks apart, the pulses have merged together, breaking the combo lock. The solution is to pipeline with precision, so that each input signal won't interfere with the signal 6 game ticks before or after. This design addressed all these issues. It worked with 8 game tick inputs, 7 game tick inputs, and even 6 game tick inputs. But something still wasn't right. Without an auto-clicker, it would occasionally fail. So I systematically tried every input spacing from 6 game ticks up to 20. And sure enough, it worked with them all save 1. 9 game ticks. Of course, this was unacceptable. If I was going to release a combo lock rated at 6 game ticks, it had to be 100% reliable at 6 game ticks and above. So I dug in to figure this out. For every other input spacing, the first dropper is powered, and then the second dropper is powered 2 game ticks later. With 9 game tick inputs, the droppers act the same way on the first pulse, but for all subsequent pulses, the second dropper is powered after 1 game tick instead of 2. I don't fully understand why. Perhaps it's some sort of dropper priming? Regardless, it seemed to be caused by the preceding pulse. So I reoriented the droppers from horizontal to vertical to insulate the second dropper from downstream effects. And then I added an observer to guarantee that the second dropper would always be powered 2 game ticks later. I had finally done it. This keypad combo lock works with any input spacing 6 game ticks and up. By the way, 6 game tick spacing means you can enter 3.3 digits per second. I then updated all the other variants to use this latest tech. These include single bookshelf and dual bookshelf designs supporting different space constraints. For example, here's a hidden single bookshelf design in which the chiseled bookshelf can be located anywhere in the top row. Here's one where it can be located anywhere in the bottom row. And here's a dual bookshelf design in which the access panel is either in a corner or 1 block away. Something was still bothering me though. The real estate behind the keypad is usually far more valuable than the region below. So I began experimenting with ways to free up this space. I tried many approaches to laddering the combo lock modules down vertically, from zigzags to spirals, but none worked reliably across every input spacing 6 game ticks and up. This one fails on 9 game ticks. This one fails on 7 and 11. And this one fails on 15 and 19. So I decided to take a different approach. Use the combo lock design I'd already perfected and transmit the signals down to it. Given how much I like to talk about speed, it may sound strange for me to say this, but the speed of these transmission lines doesn't matter all that much. At least, it's far less important than the delay between the digits. For example, an extra 4 game tick delay in the transmission lines just means the door, or whatever, triggers 4 game ticks later. However, an extra 4 game tick delay between digits for a 6-digit code amounts to a 20 game tick delay and extra risk that a digit is entered too quickly, resetting the lock. As a reminder, for each chiseled bookshelf, we need an observer to emit a pulse when it is clicked, and we need a comparator to output the signal strength to know which digit was clicked. Typically, my go-to method for transmitting a signal downward is a wall, since flipping a trapdoor against a wall instantly changes the shape of the wall below it, and that change can be detected by an observer. But for each bookshelf, the pulse and the signal strength must be perfectly synchronized in order for the combo lock to work with as little as 6 game ticks between digits. And while pulses are easily transmitted down a wall, signal strength requires a red coder, and that's just too bulky, especially when you make it torchless. Plus, trapdoors are noisy, and moving them 16 blocks from the player requires even more space. Remember my earlier designs? So, walls are not the best choice here. Instead, I went with redstone lines boosted by comparator subtraction, since it's compact and completely silent. It works like this. A signal strength ranging from 1 through 6 decays to 0 through 5 1 block away. We can then subtract it from 15 to obtain a signal ranging from 15 through 10. This way, the signal travels 1 block down and then 10 more blocks as it decays to 5 through 0. We can then subtract it from 7 to obtain 2 through 7, which is needed for the combo lock. Or we can subtract it from 15 and repeat the process. And here's the resulting dual bookshelf design. You can see how each chiseled bookshelf has a pulse line and a signal strength line to transmit signals down below for processing. The light gray and light blue for the upper shelf, and the darker gray and blue for the lower shelf. I had already recorded most of this video when I realized there was a way to use a single transmission line for each bookshelf instead of two. By all means, pause the video if you'd like to think about how this might be done. Okay, my idea was to encode the resting state of pulses on the signal strength line. That may sound complicated, but it just means we can reserve an unused signal strength, like 0 or 7, for the resting state, and then change it to the bookshelf signal strength, 1 through 6, for the duration of the pulse. This does mean that the signal can only travel 10 blocks instead of 11 each time it's boosted, but I think it's well worth the trade-off. Let me know in the comments if you found this solution, or came up with something else. Now, let's see how it works. For the top bookshelf, the signal strength in light blue wiring is allowed to decay by 1, and is snaked through these comparators to this dust here, where it is boosted by this comparator. However, in the resting state, the signal strength is overridden by this light gray circuit. Remember this comparator, we're going to come back to it. When the top bookshelf is clicked, it's detected by this observer, and the pulse is propagated through the light gray wiring down to this special configuration of 2 observers, in which the second one is watching the side of the first one. The first observer's pulse primes the comparator, so the second observer's pulse deactivates it instantly, allowing the signal strength from the top bookshelf through for 4 game ticks. Note that with comparator priming, it's the second pulse that determines the signal strength used by the comparator. The bottom bookshelf works in essentially the same way. You can see that 2 observer configuration here in the darker gray wiring, which deactivates this comparator for 4 game ticks, allowing the signal strength on the darker blue wire through. At the bottom of the transmission lines, we need to perform another subtraction so that our low digits have low strength and our high digits have high strength. Since our resting state delivers 0 strength to the side of the comparator output is a non-zero value after the subtraction. But the combo lock requires a resting signal strength of 0. That's where these purple suppression circuits come into play. It works by detecting when the signal reaches this block here, which only occurs during a pulse. When this happens, that same 2 observer circuit deactivates the suppression, allowing the main signal to flow through for 4 game ticks. Notice how there's no need for a separate latch to suppress the lower bookshelf output, because each bookshelf output is already suppressed except when clicked. In a single bookshelf design, we can even feed the signal directly into the combo lock if we ensure the resting state signal strength will be 0 after the last subtraction. This can be done by using a high resting signal strength on the transmission line, which is then converted to 0 by this comparator. Here, I'm using this configuration of 3 observers to achieve that 4 game tick pulse with comparator priming. I've now shown you 2 different observer configurations that work with comparator priming. This 2 observer configuration, which works in every possible orientation and location, and this 3 observer configuration, which only works in certain orientations. If the output observers are pointing vertically, up or down, it's non-directional. However, if the output observers are pointing horizontally, and are side by side, it's directional. It only works if the output observers are pointing north or south, not east or west. And if the output observers are pointing horizontally and stacked one on top of the other, it won't work at all. Also, make sure there are 2 input observers facing the same block, whether it's a note block, an activator rail, redstone dust, etc. If we do this instead with a single input observer, it might seem like it works if you click here. However, that's only because the player input is earlier in the update order within the game tick. With another level of separation, you can see it actually does not work. And then there's this configuration. It can work, but it's a locational horror show. Since I have a strong preference for non-locational and non-directional redstone, I only used the first 2 designs I showed you. This 2 observer design, which can be flipped in any orientation, and this 3 observer design with the pair of output observers pointing either up or down, which can be rotated in any cardinal direction. And here are my final keypad combo lock designs. As you can see, they're all non-locational and non-directional, so you can build them anywhere. They work in Java 1.20 and 1.21. They even work with the highly controversial experimental redstone changes, at least for now. Now let's take a look at the redstone behind those demos I showed at the beginning. In the single bookshelf demo, the redstone on the ground floor fits in a utility closet, with the combo lock processing down below. The output line runs into pulse extenders that operate the door. In the dual bookshelf demo, the redstone is also tucked away, providing plenty of building space, even with floors below ground. In the library, this door just leads to a bathroom. All the redstone is squeezed in here and down below. This Star Wars-inspired build demonstrates how the logic can be pushed far below the access panel. I built this before I realized the pulse and signal strength lines could be combined, but here are some options with combined lines. Here are separate spirals with shared barrels for signal boosting. And here are some double helix designs reminiscent of DNA that mostly fit in a 3x3 cross-section, where these blocks could be incorporated into the enclosure. Here are a few other things to note. If you use lecterns to configure the code, keep in mind that each page turn emits a pulse, which can quasi-power the nearby dropper, sending the item into the bottom dropper. No need to manually fix this though. After configuring all the lecterns, a single click on any bookshelf slot will reset all the droppers. This brown circuit is an optional item filter for the book return system, so non-book items won't be pulled into it. This pink circuit is an optional auto timeout. It might be helpful if other players are often attempting to hack your code. They'll probably fail, but if the last digit they enter happens to be the first digit of your code, your lock will be waiting for the second digit the next time you use it. With this auto timeout circuit, it will reset after any failed attempt. Speaking of hacking, I think it's time I told you more about that security issue I discovered in the OG 9-button combo lock by CraftyMasterman and SacredRedstone. With that combo lock, many codes are vulnerable to attack because they can be unlocked by other codes. Let me demonstrate. This combo lock is currently configured with a 4-digit code, 1212. We can see that 1212 works. But now let's try 1234. And even 1299. In fact, in addition to 1212, there are 64 other codes that will also work. The trick is to enter the digits about 1 second apart, or 20 to 23 game ticks to be precise. Given that stone buttons last 20 game ticks, it's pretty easy to enter digits at this cadence. Let's watch what happens when we enter 1, 2, 3, 4 at that 1 second pace in slow motion. The 1 unlocks both of the modules configured to match 1. The 2 unlocks both of the modules configured to match 2. And the stronger signal strength keeps the 1 modules unlocked as well. The 3 doesn't match any modules, but keeps the 1 and 2 modules unlocked. And the same is true for the 4, allowing the signal to pass through. Not all codes are susceptible, only those with vulnerable digits. A vulnerable digit is a reoccurring digit, excluding 9, where each and every intervening digit is either larger or is itself a vulnerable digit. In the special case, when reoccurring digits are back-to-back, they are also known as
repeat numbers.
Yes, repeat numbers. Thanks, Crafty. And these are also vulnerable. I was curious about the magnitude of this problem, so I used Python to find all the vulnerable codes for any given code length. And here are the results. As you can see, the vulnerability problem worsens with more digits in the code. Make no mistake, passwords are far more secure when they're longer, but the proportion of codes that are vulnerable to this issue also increases. If you'd like more details on this bug and my analysis of it, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy watching how I push the boundaries of Minecraft, you should check out how I made the fastest game of life with just redstone.